You're listening to Young PR Pros episode 114, Creative Communication.
Hi, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Young PR Pros, a weekly podcast for the young and young at heart PR pros looking for tips and advice on how to build and advance their careers. I am Christine in Ottawa, Canada.
I'm Julia Kent in Halifax, Nova Scotia.
I'm Ross Simmons, also in Halifax, Nova Scotia.
And I'm Claire Bonnyman in Toronto.
So today we're going to talk about creative communications, something really important to all of our jobs. And when I talk about creative communications, it's the whole gamut of communications, public relations and marketing as well. Just basically the creativity in our day-to-day jobs, which is pretty important. How do we use new digital tools, podcasting, blogs, social media, video, audio, photography? I could go on forever and ever and ever. We literally have an endless line of choices on how we can be creative in our day-to-day job and trying to tell stories as communicators. So in today's episode, we want to talk about what works, what doesn't, when it comes to using innovative and creative communication tools and methods. And of course, my favorite part, we're actually going to talk about some of our experiences on how we're thinking or how we have thought outside of the box. So I'm really, really curious to actually ask this first question because I can't wait to hear everyone's answers. What is the coolest project everyone has done on the job? And of course, we start with the coolest cool, who will probably have the coolest project. Ross.
So one of the coolest projects that I have ever worked on was this one campaign, and it was working with a consumer product, something that was edible. I'll say that it was a candy of some sort, and they were coming to Canada for the first time, and they wanted to make a big splash with the female population in Canada, and we had to kind of come up with a campaign that would resonate with them. And our idea was this: we started by doing some initial research. So we went to channels like Pinterest, we went to channels like Google, we went to Facebook. We started digging in, looking to see where people were making their decisions when it came to buying candy or buying this product in particular. And what we found was that there was this huge sub-community of people on Pinterest that were pinning recipes, and they were sharing do-it-yourself hacks, and they were sharing all of this information about products that people should buy. And people were commenting saying, wow, I'm going to the grocery store today to get this, or this recipe looks amazing, I can't wait to buy this. It was a trigger that went off that recognized, okay, people are actually buying things based off of what strangers are saying on channels like Pinterest. So the light bulbs went off. We were like, okay, who are these people that are creating the content that is influencing buying behavior on Pinterest? It's the mummy bloggers. It's the recipe bloggers. It's the people who have essentially built up a tribe where they're sharing recipes, they're sharing their ideas, they're sharing their new creations, and inspiring a handful of other people to actually go out and buy products. So we saw this trend and we were like, okay, we need to double down on this. So what we did was we sent all of the product, a good portion of it, to these different individuals, these bloggers, these influencers, and we paid them to essentially create content that would resonate with their audience, that showed how to use this product in a variety of different recipes, whether it was a Christmas dessert or a Super Bowl treat, all of these different things. We were able to connect with them and hire them to do this, and as a result, drive meaningful results for our client, because at that point, thousands and thousands of Canadians were reading this content from our bloggers that we had brought in, and they were essentially taking that and transferring it into sales.
Cool.
Yeah, it was pretty fun.
Although I will say you missed a top food blogger.
That's true. Next time I'll make sure that we have you on there.
I don't know, I'll be a food blogger for a day if I can get some free food. That sounds awesome.
I do. I actually get it sent to me all the time. But I always say, this does not mean I will write about it, right? Like, feel free to send me whatever you want, but there's no promise there. But that's just my personal blog policy.
Well,
But
says the ex-journalist.
yeah, I mean, if you're doing it as your career, like, there's all sorts of ways to make money as a blogger and get free stuff too. But for me, I just would gladly accept the free things. And if I loved it, I might talk about it. But if I wasn't compelled to, I didn't. But okay, am I next on the coolest project list or what?
You are, Julia. Go ahead.
Yeah, you are.
Tell us the coolest project.
So I won't steal the one that I think Christine is going to use, but I do have. I actually wasn't the first one that I thought of. So at my previous role with a project management firm, we were having a really hard time from a sales perspective and marketing perspective of finding a really a unique way to catch people's attention. The standard meet you at a trade show, give you a call on the phone, send you an email. It just wasn't working, and people get so much of that in a day. We had to find a way to really grab people's attention with the product, which was project management for construction of facilities and buildings. So I actually stumbled upon, it's basically a greeting card that's a little thicker than a greeting card, that you open it up and there is what looks like a small iPad screen or a smartphone screen, and a video plays as soon as you open up the card. So those birthday cards you get and you open it and it plays like happy birthday or something? It was like that, but there was a screen. There was a there was a screen, and then suddenly the CEO of the company was like, "Hey, I know what you need," and gave like a 25-second pitch on our product. And the uptake, they were expensive. I'll give you that. They were expensive, obviously, to produce the video, but the actual product was expensive too. And then to mail them out with tracking was important for metrics. So they were expensive, but if we broke down the cost per lead, it was like a no-brainer. And the uptake was incredible. And even the conversations that were started were like, "Hey, I don't really give a shit about your services, but I love this card. What an amazing idea." And then suddenly we had a relationship, right? And then later down the road, anyways. And then some people called us and they were like, "You know what? I've ignored your sales pitches for so long, but this card was just the coolest thing ever. It got my attention. Let's talk. Let's have a meeting." So that was definitely one of the coolest projects I worked on, and not just because the product, like the card and with the video capability itself was so cool, but because of all the moving parts to make it work. So figuring out who we were going to send these cards to, the design of the physical card, like what did the card look like, the video, the production of the video and the script of the video, and then the tracking of who had received them, and the follow-up, phoning each recipient, "Hey, did you get that card in the mail?" And either they say yes or "Oh, I haven't opened it yet," or whatever. So that was a really, really, really cool project. And I know that the company, the project management firm, is still employing that lead generation tactic using those same cards today, a few years later.
Wow.
That's cool.
Yeah.
So wait, Julia, what was the other idea that you thought that you were going to steal mine?
I think you were going to say that you have recently developed a video game.
Yes.
That's what you're going to do, aren't you?
So we'll let Claire go, and then I can swoop in with my idea.
So I think something that I found really interesting is watching the different companies that I get to be a part of do different stuff. I've never gotten to see too many really cool projects through to the end because I only have so many months in the summers. But when I was working for a not-for-profit, an international development focused one in Ottawa, and it was really, really cool to see, because in those companies, there's so much that everyone needs to be doing, right? And there's so many different ways to tell the different stories, but coming up with ideas out of the box was very cool. While I was there, I got to work on a bunch of different kind of game plans of how to take campaigns and ideas and the work that they were doing in other countries and bring it back to life in Canada and relate it to people here so that they could understand it and conceptualize it and would feel compelled to get involved. And one thing that I got to see while I was there, which I unfortunately had no part of, but was completely in awe of, was this recipe book. And the idea was that in other countries, when they were working on nutritional development, they had a ton of different recipes, and they were trying to encourage people to use different ingredients and make really nutrient-dense foods. So they had all these recipes, and some genius looked at this and said, I have a lot of these recipes in my kitchen. I wonder what they taste like. And they went home, they made the recipes, thought it was really delicious, and decided to put all of those recipes into a book that they could then show off at different events and show them and be like, look, this is stuff that we do, but everyone uses recipe books. And it was this beautifully crafted book with all these really cool photos and facts in it. And I thought it was a brilliant use of stuff that they already had and a way to really make it go that extra mile. So whenever I think about trying to do a creative project or taking even a school assignment to that next level, I always kind of think of like, make a recipe book or something like that. So
Very cool.
I don't know. We'll see what I can get my hands on later.
All right. So mine, as Julia said, is yes, I'm actually currently working. The project's not done, but I'm currently working on putting together a video game, a mobile video game. So we sat around a table in my team, and one of the issues that we are trying to solve is how can we reduce the amount of distracted driving and texting and driving on the roads. There's stats out there that, everyone kind of does it. And we have messaging for, an older generation, but we don't necessarily have anything that targets youth or a younger generation, and especially new drivers. So we're talking about ages, 15 to 16, either just about to get their license or studying to get their license. So right, in the prime, right at the beginning, and reminding them that, distracted driving and texting and driving is a really dangerous behavior, which not a lot of young people necessarily see at the beginning. So we figured, what kind of tool, what kind of strategy can come up with, or how can we engage with this audience? And the idea was, why don't we build a video game? Now, we went through interviewing a bunch of different companies, and I mean, this is a cool project because we didn't have a huge amount of budget because we're a not-for-profit. If we were, TELUS or some big multinational company, we'd have potentially hundreds of thousands of dollars, and we could create a game that, competes with Grand Theft Auto on PlayStation, right? But we actually had to be really creative because with only a little bit of budget, we couldn't compete with the PlayStation Grand Theft Auto or whatever driving game that was out there. We couldn't even compete with the app games because even an app was going to be too expensive. We were basically brought down to, you've got HTML5 and you've got to create a game that's engaging for youth. So we found a really good company. We went back and forth, came up with a game, tested it out, made sure that the functionality worked really well. And I think the coolest part of this project so far is I actually hosted an informal focus group. My cousin is actually 16 years old, so I gave him a call and I said, if I were to buy you and like a dozen of your friends pizza, could you all get in one room and play a video game for me? And he's like, of course, a video game and pizza? How can I go wrong? But in my entire career, this was a huge lesson learned and a huge success for me. And the reason why I think it's the coolest project is because of this lesson learned. Not forgetting to do focus groups is, I think, really important, especially when you're building a campaign that's directed to a certain audience, or if you're building a product for a specific audience. It is like that. I basically spent an hour with a group of, under 10, like there was about just under 10, 15 and 16-year-olds, and just walking around the room, seeing how they engaged with it, asking them questions, trying to figure out what they liked about the game, what they didn't like about the game, even just figuring out how they were playing the game itself. Were they using their thumbs? Were they using the finger? What were they actually doing? The amount of stuff that I learned in that focus group was tremendous, and I was able to bring it back to the company, and the company was able to, update the game. So, and again, we're not just updating it because these were like bright ideas that I had. These were coming directly from the experience of the audience that we were trying to build for. So again, it's still not finished. We're still tweaking a few more things. Hope to launch this year. And then hopefully I'll be able to come back on the show and talk about the success of the coolest project I've ever worked on.
I think you might be in competition with the coolest cool for that one.
It's tough to compete with video games.
Hi, I'm Sherry Lynn Starkey, and I'm the president of Thornley Fallis Communications. When I'm not listening to Young PR Pros, a show which I love, by the way, I am working very hard on delivering quality audio programs for marketers, communicators, and creative advertisers through IABC Ottawa's podcast, The Voice. Join me and my co-hosts Tina Barton and Angela Prokopiak as we provide expert insights and practical tips with the help of some of North America's leading marketing and communications professionals. Tune in for our 2016-17 season, where we will cover such topics as content marketing, employee engagement, reputation management, and much more. You can subscribe to IABC Ottawa's The Voice on iTunes, or go to ottawa.iabc.com for more information.
All right, so next question. There's a ton of tools and approaches, online and all around us. I want to ask everyone, do you have any favorite or go-to tool that helps you in the creative process? So, your boss has come to you or a client has come to you and said, this is our goal, this is our audience. Tell us what you need to do. To be creative, what are the tools that you use to kind of get your creative juices flowing? So, Ross, what do you do?
So I'd say that there are two key things that I like to do when someone that says, Ross, we have to do research for this client, or what my process typically is starting with research. And one of the first things that I like to do is go where the user is, go where the audience is spending the majority of their time. So with the example I talked about earlier, that channel happened to be Pinterest. If we're targeting men who are between the ages of, say, 16 and 20, we're going to look at a channel like Reddit and check what content people are creating, what content they're sharing, what content they're discussing, and then go into the various sub-communities within that to get a better understanding of how these people think, what type of content they want us to develop, what type of stories resonate with them, and what insights can we gather from the content that they're sharing and the conversations they're having with one another that can guide our campaign or guide our approach as we start to kind of figure out what type of story and messaging do we want to tell when we're trying to resonate with this audience. Another tool that I find extremely valuable is a tool called BuzzSumo, BuzzSumo. And what it allows you to do is type in a URL, type in a username, and then very quickly it helps you by spinning back a handful of research and data around what articles are trending. So, for example, I could type in www.entrepreneur.com. It would scrape their site, identify the best articles that are being shared on that website, and then recommend them back to me. The reason why that's valuable is because you get a chance to understand what type of content their readers actually want. You could do this with a Cosmopolitan. You could use this with a do-it-yourself blog. You could do this with a marketing blog. You could do it with any other type of resource that you can find. And at the end of the day, what you're receiving is insights into what type of content, what type of stories, what type of messages that audience actually wants. And that's where you can find some gold and find some value that you can use for your campaign. So the first one that I always use is channels like Reddit and Pinterest, communities where people are spending time. Second one is an actual tool, buzzsumo.com. I definitely recommend that people check that out.
So Ross, you use Reddit to research kind of, because I think the reason why marketers are afraid of it is they don't necessarily want to jump on and start talking about or promoting their product on Reddit because they're just kind of afraid of the reaction of the community because it's such a passionate community. But what you're saying as marketers or communicators, not to be afraid to use it as a tool for research purposes.
Exactly. I don't think people should be afraid of Reddit whatsoever. It is a channel that people get afraid of. It has a bad rap, don't get me wrong, for a lot of bad reasons, but also for a lot of good reasons. And I think that Reddit offers a great insight into how people think behind the scenes. Because it's anonymous, you get a raw look at how people feel about a certain topic and how they feel about a specific subject. So when I look at Reddit, I don't see it as a channel that you should all run to and start spamming and submitting your links. No, what I'm saying is you should understand the audience itself that is there, understand the different communities. There's subreddits about veganism, there's subreddits about entrepreneurship, there's subreddits about hockey, coffee, you name it. If there's a topic out there in the world, there's a subreddit about it. And I encourage people to use these subreddits to not only gain insight into how their audience is thinking, but also if you can add value, right? Like if you can actually create content and stories that add value to that community, then by all means, use Reddit. It's a great way to connect with people and connect with the masses. There's a reason why it's called the front page of the internet.
And the other tool is BuzzSumo. Can you spell that?
Yes, BuzzSumo, BuzzSumo. BuzzSumo, like a bee and a sumo wrestler, so to speak.
Oh, okay. Awesome. Well, we'll definitely make sure to link to that in our show notes. What about you, Julia? What do you do to get your creative juices flowing?
Well, I'm actually going to talk about a different type of tool that involves paper and pencil. Or paper and pen. Whatever you...
Interesting.
Yeah, I know. It's like my dad said something about a fax yesterday, and I was like, what, Dad? What's a fax? Yeah, it's in the same category as CDs and phone books, I think. But, yeah, so I actually, as of my New Year's resolution, I guess, for lack of a better term, was I started to bullet journal. Have you guys heard of bullet journaling?
Yes. I'm so addicted to it.
Yeah. So, Christine, I'm actually sure I shoved it down your throat months and months and months
No,
ago.
I think what happened is you shoved it down Kayla, which is my employee, her throat, and then she shoved it down my throat.
Yes. Exactly. So bullet journaling. I've always been a pen and paper kind of gal. I'm a very visual person. That is how I stay organized. For a couple years, I just used my iPhone, the reminders function and the calendar function. And I, without a shadow of a doubt, can say I'm 300% more productive when I'm using pen and paper, particularly using pen and paper with a bullet journal. And it's a really, really simple thing. It's basically you take a blank notebook and it's a do-it-yourself agenda is basically what it is, but with productivity as the focus point. And so just Google bullet journal, and the founder has a very quick YouTube video you can watch if you just want to get the quick and dirty of what it's about. I won't get into that, but bullet journaling completely changed how I worked, both in personal and in my professional life. And in terms of the creative process, I find it absolutely invaluable for a variety of reasons. I'm big into brainstorming, and I really like to brainstorm with others, and I really like to brainstorm with pen and paper and to record ideas and to doodle and to draw clouds and stuff like that. But with bullet journaling, you can actually go back and look at, previous brainstorms, and I just find it's an organized way of hashing out ideas. And in terms of like creativity and where I get ideas from, well, that can be anywhere. It can be, from Reddit or Twitter or whatever. But this would be a tool in the more traditional sense that I would highly, highly, highly recommend. If you know yourself to be a pen and paper kind of person, bullet journaling is probably exactly what your life and your organizational behaviors is missing. But I'm going to very quickly say the other one that I thought of, I have gotten some of my very best ideas from attending conferences and trade shows. And that could either be from a talk you attend at a conference. I'm thinking in particular of the IABC World Conference that I had the privilege of attending in 2014 in Toronto. I got some wicked, crazy good ideas from the speakers there, but I've also attended trade shows, not in PR or communications or journalism. I've gotten ideas, marketing and PR ideas from other companies at other trade shows outside of my personal industry. So getting out there and going to things, you can get a lot of ideas from what other people are doing, and not even copying, but spin-off ideas. And particularly if you're going somewhere where there's international representation, there's a lot of stuff that it hasn't been done in Canada yet that's going on elsewhere. So keeping an eye on what other communities are doing is a really good idea.
Cool.
I think oddly enough, I'm very much a pen and paper person too, but I've never heard of bullet journaling, and I feel like I'm missing out.
Yes, you have to Google it.
So missing out. Like if you are anything like me, you will it'll just change everything for you, and you'll just love it so much. Like I start every single day with a cup of coffee and my bullet journal, like every single day, even as a mom.
Okay.
That's interesting. So how long have you been bullet journaling?
Since January 1st. Like it was a New Year's resolution thing, and it just so happened that I learned about it in December, so it worked out really well. But I didn't intentionally say I'm going to start as a New Year's resolution. It just worked out that way. But yeah, it's just been a godsend, and I keep trying to I'm like the bullet journal missionary. I keep trying to convert everyone I see. And people are like, yeah. And I'm like, no, just please try it. Just try it for 1 month. And I'm like, you're just going to be hooked. You're just going to be totally hooked. And it's incredible. It's absolutely incredible.
I actually
love it.
converted my husband and one of his colleagues. I told my husband about the bullet journal, and then he was like, I think one of my colleagues would really like that. And then the next day he came back and he's like, so my colleague and I started the bullet journal yesterday. And I was like, yes. the word is being passed on.
Great. And it's customizable, right? So there's little things that you'll see in the YouTube video on bulletjournal.com that you won't like, and you can just change those. It's totally do-it-yourself, customizable. It's the principles that really increase productivity.
Yeah.
So, anyways,
I feel like
end
I'm
rant.
kind of left out here now because I don't bullet journal at all. So you guys might kick me off of the podcast. Hopefully not. No, I think it's. I did try it once and it just couldn't stick. So I'll give it another go. I'm definitely gonna give it another try.
We may make it a prerequisite for being, a host on Young PR Bros. I'm kidding, Ross.
Yeah. At least let us know how it goes.
So now I definitely have to stick to it. I will. I'll let you guys know.
Okay, Claire, what about you?
Well, I think, my first approach and my thing when I'm coming up with ideas is I always consult my notes. I'm an obsessive note taker. I always have at least 2 or 3 notebooks on me. It's pretty ridiculous. But they each have, their purposes and their meanings. And I have one right now that the entire back half is dedicated to jotting down random thoughts I have during the day. And they happen when I'm having coffee with friends or, when I'm sitting in class and the prof says something and I'm like, why do things have to be like that? Or, if I'm driving around and I'm like, you know what? I wish there was something like a podcast on this. And I always just write it down. And then when I'm bored, I'll look back through, sometimes flesh out the ideas. But, if there's ever some kind of open creative thing or a project or some work gets assigned and I'm like, oh, you know what? I've thought about this before. I will always consult my notes because I think the best ideas come up in those situations that aren't pressured. And then they just kind of develop and grow and expand and get absolutely crazy beautiful from there. But that being said, too, I'm with Ross completely on consulting things like social media and Reddit. Honestly, there's so much information on there and it's utterly fascinating because you can go by locations or you can go by, again, sub-communities and passions. I also like to use Tumblr, which is kind of just a more aesthetic Reddit almost. And using always just hashtags. If you look under any kind of hashtag related to what you're doing, there's so much stuff there on Twitter, on Tumblr, now on Facebook that they're using hashtags too. It is honestly the hashtags are the most amazing tool for anyone looking for a community or a subject or anything like that online. So I'm always very curious to do that and to learn more and to also get ideas from there. So yeah, I think honestly though, it always starts with just notes because if you have stuff boiling around in your head and you don't get it down, it's gone. So I will start bullet journaling now, I think.
Please report
but
back.
But yeah, I'm very much...
Yeah.
I'm very much intrigued by this, yeah. I will let you guys know.
And it actually, just on that note, it may allow you to go down to 1 notebook, Claire. It might.
That would be so nice because my purses keep getting bigger.
Anyways, moving on.
All right. So, as I've already, said, and you could hear that I'm a missionary for Bullet Journal as well. That is definitely on my list of, tools. I've got an ideas page with just where I jot down random ideas. I also do it by project sometimes, and it's really, really great to be able to just brainstorm. But I also pair my bullet journal with Evernote. I really, really like Evernote because I kind of use it for a bunch of different things. So often what I do, and because I'm in public affairs and I do a lot of media relations and public relations in my job, a lot of time I'm dealing with the media and tracking news stories and collecting news stories. So that just sometimes comes through Mother Google, just using Google, going through the news features, and just kind of seeing what's out there on a certain topic that that my organization might be thinking of coming out with. So I like to bookmark all of these articles, but more than just bookmark them, because I was finding that I was using Delicious a lot, and I was bookmarking all these great articles and tagging them. But what happens is if an article moves, or like sometimes after even just as little as 2 years, people's websites move around. Articles on even just websites like traditional news websites, sometimes they're taken off the website after a while. And then I would go back through my old bookmarks and look at some of the old articles, and I'm like, oh, I remember that headline, and then I wanted to go and read about it, and then it was gone. So the good thing about Evernote is I can do more than bookmark it. I can bookmark it and actually completely screen grab the entire article. So for some reason that website is gone or they've removed the article, I can still go back and I can read the headline, I can read the lead, and I can read, what was the meat of the story, and how did it work that way. So Evernote allows me to do that. Evernote, I also, in conjunction with the bullet journal, I have the Smart Evernote notebook. So I actually scan all the pages of my notebook, and then it keeps it in the Evernote cloud. And just the other day, I remembered that I had an idea about travel PR, and then I just went into Evernote and I just typed that in, travel PR, and one of my notebook pages came up with with my brainstorming notes about travel PR. So, sometimes I'm too lazy to just go flip back through, and sometimes, because I'm still learning with the bullet journal, it's not always as organized as I'd like it to be, and it's more organized now than it was in the first few months that I was using it. So Evernote really helps me with my previous notes that come from like last year, because I've been using Evernote for at least 2 years now. So those are kind of my tools that I use to kind of organize my ideas and search through my ideas. But the other tool that I use is kind of, it sounds weird, but like my brain. I actually try to read at least one article that is related to a project that I'm working on. So in the industry. So for example, because like I had said earlier, I'm working on a distracted driving game. So every day I just use Google Alerts or just go through social media and try to find an article that might be trending on distracted driving. And then I also try to at least read one article every day that's just related to PR, communications, and marketing. And I feel like because I just do one article every single day, I bookmark the ones that I really like, and I save the ones that I really like, and I highlight, parts of the article that I think they're important. I feel like that just kind of sits and bubbles in the back of my head, and then one day I'll be sitting in a meeting and one of those articles will pop in my head and then create a really good idea. So it's more of a long-term kind of goal, and it's not necessarily something that I do as soon as I have a project. It's something that I kind of continuously try to do. At least every day I try to read one really good article.
I like that. That's a great idea.
Hi, Young PR Pros listeners. My name is Sharon Chung. I'm a PR professional in Ottawa, Canada, and this podcast in particular has helped jumpstart my career, whether through relevant industry insights or reminders for transitioning from role to role. So keep listening.
So moving on to the next question, what campaigns or use of creative tools do you guys admire? So do you guys have like a campaign, like a go-to campaign that inspires you when it comes to using creative tools or materials at work? Let's start with you, Ross.
Yeah, so one of the campaigns that I truly love is one that combines both research and innovation from a technology perspective, and it's the Old Spice Guy campaign.
How did I know you were going to say that?
It is, without question, my favorite campaign.
He said it before.
I knew that was going to be your answer.
No, I love the Old Spice Guy campaign, and the reason why I love it is because they took research and insights into understanding that it was the woman in the home who typically was buying the body wash for their husband, their spouse, their boyfriend, and they didn't really want their boyfriend to be like in the Axe commercials where everybody goes crazy and loves them and stuff like that. That was resonating with like a university crowd. They wanted to target people who were maybe 25 plus, a little bit more mature, may have moved out with their girlfriend, maybe engaged or have a partner, that kind of thing. And they took the insight and they were like, we need to create a campaign that showcases the guy that your man could smell like, right? So they took that approach. They created this over-the-top campaign where it was filled with hilarious actions and scenarios, and then they put that on YouTube, and the world reacted, and it went viral very quickly. It spread like wildfire. But what they did as a reaction to this viral spread was very unique. They started to dig deeper into understanding how people were connecting and sharing this video. And they recognized that on Facebook, they were sharing it, on Twitter, they were sharing it, and they were having conversations about this guy who they had created. And they took that insight to start creating mini campaigns. And those mini campaigns took on a life of their own, and it allowed the Old Spice Guy to become a household name, which is pretty powerful when you think about it.
What about you, Julia? What's your go-to campaign?
I can't say that it's like a single campaign, but it's just like, and this is, I feel like this is the most cliched answer. Apple.
Oh, you stole my idea.
Every time they're putting out these iPhones that are the same damn thing, barely better. And I still watch these commercials and see their ads and get this overwhelming feeling of, oh, the world's going to get so much better when this new product comes out. Like, I just am such a sucker. And for me to say I'm a sucker when I work in the industry and I know what they're like, I know what's behind what they're trying to do and like what goes into what they're producing. Yeah, they always get me. So I'm in awe. I'm in awe of like, they're like and yeah. Anyways, next question. I'll explain why. Yeah.
Okay. Claire.
I think for me, it's a pretty recent one, but there was a podcast that came out in 2015 called The Message. And unsurprisingly, I'm obsessed with a podcast, but it was a kind of an effort between Panoply and General Electric. And they created what they called the General Electric like podcast theater. And it was brilliant. Like, it's, I think, like 8 episodes. It is a science fiction podcast, and it's all about decoding a message from outer space from like 70 years ago. And it is just like the coolest, most fascinating, like, thought-provoking, your mind goes wild, and it's so good. And you can listen to it just because it sounds awesome and it's an incredible story, but it is also just like, honestly, so many claps for General Electric for coming up with that, because it's probably one of the most effective uses of podcast advertising for a company that I think I have seen since. I think it even won like a Radio Mercury Award in 2016 and stuff like that. But it's one of those things that I think of and I'm like, you know, there are ways to use these tools that it blows me away. So yeah.
So I'm gonna have to side with Julia. Apple was actually the sort of campaign, well, a specific Apple campaign that I always go back to, and it's actually a campaign that was done before I was born. But I go back to it because it was so innovative for its time. Do you guys remember the Apple 1984 campaign? Like, it was one of like,
yes,
their like
so
first
good.
sort of advertising campaign, and I think they got marketing from the beginning. And they one thing that I love about Apple is not just about selling. They don't just sell computers or iPhones or Apple Watches or iPhone touches or all, like, you know, they don't just sell the product. They actually sell they sell a brand, they sell a feeling, and you can just tell when you walk up to someone who's an Apple enthusiast. And you know, you walk up to me, so I'm very biased, but like, I'm wearing the Apple Watch and I'm talking on, you know, my iPhone, and I have my iPad stuck underneath my arm, and I keep, you know, bugging my husband that I want an iMac on our kitchen table. So, and it's you know, there is the aspect of it's a great computer and everything works, and I like the way it works. But theoretically, I could get that from any company. I could get that from a PC. I could get that from an HP or whatever. But what I felt about that marketing campaign, just they weren't selling a computer. And in fact, they never showed a computer in that ad. They were selling a brand, they were selling a feeling, and they were selling an experience. And I think that I go back to that when I'm trying to think of creative ideas and remind myself to think outside of the box a little bit. And, especially for this, I'm going to have to, in 2017, I'm going to have to think of another way of promoting this distracted driving game, right? The first thing is to build it, but next year I've got to promote it. And I need to think beyond just promoting the product that I've built. I need to think about the experience I want people to feel once they finish playing the game. And I think that Apple really does that in a really good way. So Apple is definitely my my go-to campaign when it comes to creative campaigns.
Hey, this is Shel Holtz, the host of For Immediate Release and the owner of the FIR Podcast Network. And I listen to every episode of Young PR Pros, not just because I host the show on the FIR Podcast Network, but at the ripe old age of 62, I like to know what the young people in this profession are thinking.
All right, so last questions before we jump into our lessons learned. So for our listeners, what advice do you have when it comes to approaching creative communication? So I'd like everyone to just give one little tidbit, one advice for our listeners, our young professionals, our young at heart professionals who want to be creative. So Ross, what is your one advice?
My one piece of advice would be to definitely start with research, right? Like, it always comes down to understanding your audience, understanding the stories that resonate with them and the stories that they want to read. So go spend time consuming the content that they're sharing amongst their friends, whether that's in a Reddit, a Pinterest, whatever channel it may be. Invest time and energy in truly understanding what type of content and what type of stories will resonate with them, and then go out, use that value, use that insight to create something amazing. And that's really what it comes down to.
Awesome. Julia, what's your one piece of advice?
Focus groups.
Yeah.
And that, like I can't tell you how many times in my career I've thought my company or my team has thought we knew something, and focus groups have revealed something the opposite. So focus groups.
Definitely. Totally agree on that. Claire, what's your one piece of advice?
I think just when it comes up to coming with the idea, there's no stupid idea. There's bad ideas, but there's not stupid ones. So when it comes to creativity, you can't really fail. You can just think things through a little bit better.
I like that. Good advice, Claire.
That's nice.
You sound so wise among the group.
I'm twirling my mustache corners, and
So what my one piece of advice? So I was going to talk about audience, but Ross, you stole my thunder. So I don't worry. I actually wrote a couple of things down for this question. One question that I ask myself when I'm trying to be creative is I ask, what hasn't been done? I find that often, and a lot of times, we do research and we find these really cool ideas, and we're like, oh, that would be great. Let's just do it, or let's copy it. I think finding ideas and looking at other companies and seeing what they did is great, but adapting it and making it your own, or maybe even finding a way to take that idea and turning it into something that someone hasn't done, because that's where the creativity is, and that's where the success will come. And that'll also make you, I think, as a young professional, stand out, and so that you're not just kind of regurgitating things that you've read. You're taking things that you've read, thinking about it, and adapting it for the audience, for the goal, and for the company that you're working for.
So now we come to my favorite part of the episode, which is where everyone gets to talk about what they learned today. And we will start with Christine.
So I actually learned something from Ross today. BuzzSumo. I actually wrote that down in my notes, and it's definitely going to be a tool that I'm going to check out and use in my creative process. So that was my lessons learned, is to check out BuzzSumo.
Ross?
So the biggest lesson that I learned is more of a reminder, and it's a reminder that Claire brought up around hashtags and the value of channels like Tumblr. Like, Tumblr is something that I haven't used for a long time, but it's something that I should be using because there's a large group of people using this channel. So it's a great reminder that Tumblr is a channel that should be used by marketers and communications professionals to kind of leverage with hashtags to kind of identify, again, what is your audience thinking. So I love that tip. That was great.
And Julia?
I'm going to have to admit that I need to refresh myself on the 1984 Apple campaign because I cannot recall all the details right now. So that's my homework.
Yeah, I think that and bullet journaling are mandatory homework for everyone.
And you know what? We'll link to it in the show notes.
I agree.
We'll make sure that everyone can freshen up or remind them about that awesome campaign.
And the takeaways that I have from this episode, besides the 1984 ad and bullet journaling, are just the emphasis on, research. Listening to everyone talk about the process that you go through, you can look and you can research online and find out about your audience. And then you also have to talk to your audience. You have to learn so much before you can effectively tell a story. So, never forget that, you really have to learn.
Thank you guys so much for listening. We really appreciate the love and support. Please leave us a review on iTunes. It means the world to us. And please definitely check out our blog as well, youngprpros.ca. I'm Ross Simmons. Thank you guys for listening, and we'll catch you next time. This episode featured tracks from Poddington Bear. The sound work and editing was done by the wonderful Claire Bonnyman.